Now Socrates relates a myth like this. Once upon a time, Pluto reported to Jove that judgments were being made badly and contrary to deserts. For some who had lived good lives were going to Tartarus and not to the Blessed Isles, and others who had lived wickedly and deserved to be sent to Tartarus were going off to the Blessed Isles. So Jove said, "I shall end this manner of judgment, and I shall do so by no longer having the judges clothed in bodies. They will be naked, and the judged similarly will no longer be embodied but will also be naked. In addition, I shall remove their foreknowledge of death, so that they will not know when they are going to die." In this way, the myth, moving forward like a story, does not preserve the simultaneity of things that are contemporaneous, but divides them into earlier and later, and speaks of what is less perfect as earlier, and only then brings in what is perfect. For we should advance from the imperfect to the perfect. This is what I mean. The myth says that long ago the judges were clothed in bodies, but now are naked, and that long ago the judgments were bad, but now are good. Note the distinction, but observe that it makes it as a story, since in reality, as I shall demonstrate, there are always naked judges and always embodied ones, and there are always bad judgments and always excellent ones. Let me deliver the interpretation of the myth, and this will be evident. Plato says that the judgments are made badly, and those who have lived wickedly are sent to the Blessed Isles, whereas those of good constitution are sent to Tartarus. By this he signifies our judgment in this life here, for we often say when a bad man has died, "Alas, what a divine man has died, may he go to the Blessed Isles." Observe that in our own judgment we do not consign him to Tartarus as a wretched fellow, but send him to the Blessed Isles. We do this because of emotional involvement affecting our judgment, for often we know that he was bad, but since he has been good to us, say by financially supporting us or procuring advantages for us or such like, we praise him as a good man. Sometimes we do this not because our lives are emotionally linked with him, but as a result of deceit and without involvement. For often we think in line with appearances that he is good, and for that reason we commend him, but we are deceived, because the stain of his vice is concealed. See how badly we judge, whereas the divine judges always judge correctly, for they know who ought to go to Tartarus and who to the Blessed Isles. So it is in relation to our judgment that the myth says there were bad verdicts. Observe that it is forever simultaneously true that our judgment is distorted and unsound, while superior beings judge divinely. The myth, however, begins from what is imperfect and says long ago there were bad judgments, but when proceeding to the perfect it says, but now they are just. Why is it that Jove did not do this on his own initiative, but had to be told by Pluto? We say this signifies that the inferior always reverts to the superior. So as an inferior power, Pluto reverts to the power of judgment. So much about what the bad judgments signify. Now let me go back to demonstrating what the myth means by original embodiment and subsequent nakedness. Here too, the myth separates what belongs together and invites us to proceed from the more imperfect to the more perfect. Note that here too, the myth refers riddlingly to our life here and to life there. For we who are embodied pass judgment on the judged who are also embodied, and that is how error arises. For as a result of the great wealth and resources of the judged, we necessarily judge badly and say what is pleasing to the rulers and such like, but there the judges are naked. For just as those who see through a mirror do not see clearly, so too those who judge when embodied have their judgment clouded. That is why the judges are naked there. The same is true of the judged, so their great wealth does not deceive the judges. Observe also that the judges and the judged are always naked and always embodied, but as a myth it put imperfection first, leading on to nakedness and perfection. The interpreters have not been able to grasp this because they have traversed the depths of Plato's language, for he says this clearly and emphatically, and nothing other than this. Now that we have discussed this, let us next examine the third question, namely what is signified by the removal of the foreknowledge of death. For we ask, did he create foreknowledge of death as a good or as something evil? If good, then why does he now remove it, although it is good? If he removes it on the ground that it is evil, then why ever, if it is evil, did he introduce it in the beginning? Since this is a problem at the surface level, we must expound the concealed truth. Some say he acted well when he removed foreknowledge of death, for if we knew when we were going to die, then we should always live badly and unjustly, but at the time of our death we should do some small share of good and appear to be of good constitution. But as things are, it is the greatest good that we do not know the time of our death, for we are compelled to act as autonomous and truly rational agents. And of course Epictetus too says, "Take care to keep death in mind and you will not do anything cheap in this guest house." This is well said, but we must explain what it means that there should once have been foreknowledge, but it should now have been abolished. Note that there are 3 dilemmas. The first asks, does the soul live only here together with the body and is it destroyed together with it? Or is it separated from the body and does it survive just by itself? The second asks, is the soul judged only here in this life or in another life too? The third asks, is it only humans who judge or is there a divine power too? In these dilemmas, the 3 first options imply each other, and the alternatives also imply each other. That is to say, if the soul lives only here and is destroyed together with the body, then it is clear that it is judged only here and not elsewhere too, and that the judges are human only and not a divine power. Further, the 3 latter options have the same implication, for if the soul exists by itself separated from the body, then clearly it is judged in another life too, and by a divine power and not by humans. So again, in this case too, the myth draws a distinction, for we imagine that this foreknowledge of death refers to our being rid of our current life, thinking that the soul is no longer judged thereafter, whereas the truth is that the real judgment takes place there. So he removed the foreknowledge here, though it would be more correct to call it ignorance, teaching us that we must look to those judges. Since Plato says that Jove instructed Prometheus to end the foreknowledge, let us deliver an interpretation of the poetic myth about Prometheus. Prometheus is the overseer of the descent of rational souls, for this is the task of the rational soul, to have forethought, and above all to know itself. For irrational creatures perceive when they are struck a blow, yet know nothing before they are struck, whereas the rational soul is able above all to ascertain the good. This is surely why Epimetheus is appointed the overseer of the irrational soul, because he understands after he is struck and not before. So Prometheus is the power established over the descent of rational souls. This rational soul is fire, and since fire tends upwards, so too the soul pursues and clings to higher things. And why is Prometheus said to have stolen fire? What is stolen is removed from its own sphere to a foreign one. So since the rational soul is sent here from on high, its own sphere, virtually a foreign place, that is the reason why fire is said to have been stolen. And why in a fennel stalk? The fennel is hollow, so it signifies the changeable body into which the soul is brought. And why did he steal it against the will of Jove? The myth is again continuing as a story. In fact, both of them, both Prometheus and Jove, wanted the soul to remain on high, but since it was necessary for it to be brought down, the myth presents what is appropriate to the characters, and it presents the stronger, i.e. Jove, as unwilling, for he wanted it to remain on high, and it makes the weaker drag it down here. So Jove made a gift of the woman Pandora, that is, female comeliness. What does this signify? The irrational soul. For since the soul, being incorporeal and divine, has fallen into this realm, and was not able to be joined to the body without a mediating element, it is joined through the irrational soul. This is called Pandora because each of the gods, the poet says, favoured her with a gift. What is signified by this is that the illumination of things here comes from the heavenly bodies. For he said, "Turn yourself towards things of a lower order, for just as light shines merely by acting as light, so too God orders the universe merely by acting as God. Hence the universe necessarily had to be perfect, and what is perfect had a beginning, middle and end. And the universe also had to have dregs and a lowest element, so that there should be the things subject to generation and decay. And Hesiod said that Jove gave her to us and we received her, embracing our own misfortune, thus signifying that it is through the irrational soul that our life involves the passions. Let that suffice on this point."